What's up, you beauties? Welcome to the High and Wide Hockey YouTube channel, episode 34, season 7. I'm your host, Jim Icavone, and I'm joined, as always, by Jack Smith. If you're catching us live on YouTube, make sure you smash that subscribe button, hit the alert so you guys never miss a show. And for all the podcast listeners out there, don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts or Spotify so you're first in line when the newest episodes drop. Attention hockey fans and golf lovers, HW Hockey has just dropped the perfect blend of style and performance, our brand new HW Hockey golf hats. Whether you're hitting the links or just repping your favorite hockey brand off the ice, these hats are designed for comfort, breathability, and that clean, classic look. With the sleek fit and embroidered HW logo, you'll be turning heads while sinking putts. Don't miss out. Keep it high and wide all summer long before they're gone. Venmo at HW Hockey and make sure to send over your mailing address so we can ship you out your HW gear. We'll have the barcode some point in the show. We'll save it for later because we have a lot of important topics to get to tonight. Obviously, the big one is the Flyers have finally found their coach, Jack, and maybe they had him all along, which is, I think, sort of underwhelming. But I want to get your thoughts on that. Obviously, there was big news that came out yesterday. The Flyers' future superstar was maybe in a little bit of a fender bender, Jack, which is a little scary considering the Flyers' history here. So we'll talk about that as well. But obviously, our main topic tonight, and the topic that we'll be spending majority of the show on, I imagine, is the Flyers have hired Rick Tocchet to, coach the Flyers for I think the next 5 years. It was 5 years, $5 million per. So he's going to be here for a while. If things go well, you would assume he's going to be here for a while. Typically, the Flyers coaches these days, the shelf life seems to be around 2 to 3 years. But Rick Tocchet's the coach, Jack. What are your initial thoughts and feelings on that?
Well, my very first thought is that maybe he doesn't dislike Philly as much as I originally thought. I guess money talks. And that just is the whole Pittsburgh thing, which I didn't make up. But I am glad from a perspective of the Flyers seem to be, this guy was highly sought after, whether we want to admit it or not, or can't comprehend the reasons why. He was highly sought after, and he chose Philly. That's good for the organization because the last 10 years, we're worried about anybody coming here because we had such a bad reputation over those last 10 years. So for that alone, I love it. As far as what he's going to do with the actual team, I really don't know. The coaching record really doesn't hold up. There's a couple here and there kind of things where he did okay, and he does have a Jack Adams. We can get into that later as well. But it definitely wasn't my first choice. It seems more of the old elk where I was hoping for somebody who can grow with this team. Briere emphasized communication, which I think Tocchet will do, and teaching. And I don't know how much of a teacher Tocchet is really, but I guess we'll see. And yeah, it's not what I expected. It's a big name. It's a big contract. It's a big city. But they're opening themselves up to take a hefty amount of criticism, whether it be the coaching record, whether it be that stupid he's a former Flyer thing, whatever. I certainly hope it works, and you got to give him year one. You have to. Things got to settle out. But Twitter is going to be like, I may have to shut down my account. It'll be pointless going on. Like anything that doesn't go their way, oh my God, because we were kind of against it. Like maybe it wasn't our first choice, I'll say, but Twitter vehemently is against it. And I understand some of the reasons why, but because they didn't get their way, look out, man. I'm going to try to stay positive because I can't live in the realm of negativity. So I'm going to do the best that I can to give them the benefit of the doubt, because what choice do we have? And, at this time, that's really all I can do. That's all I can do. Hope, pray, and look away from Twitter.
Yeah. And so I have a couple things. Obviously, a lot of thoughts on this. There's different ways I want to dissect this hiring for the Flyers. And the first thing that kind of comes to mind for myself is, the new slogan or whatever it was, a new era of orange, right? And I think a lot of people took this as the Flyers are going to be innovative. They're going to be doing new things, yada, yada. But if you've been paying attention, the new era of orange has been getting back to the roots, right? And in that sense, they haven't lied. And I know it's easy to pin our own expectations for what a new era of orange means to us as an individual, right? But a new era of orange the whole time has been getting back to the roots because the old regime got so far away from, I don't know what the hell they were doing. It was, kind of what we were seeing it was going the way that society's kind of gone the last, bunch of years there, where everything kind of went left. And I don't mean, I just mean that metaphorically. I don't mean politically, God forbid. Because it went really corporate. They were really, really corporate, really got away from the Flyers' roots there. And so what the old regime's done is, we've seen less gritty. We've seen the team go back to playing a certain way. They are more fun to watch now than they were in the past. If we can, I know we all have short memories, but they were borderline unwatchable for large portions of seasons, if not whole seasons. So the organization as a whole has come back to its roots and still coming back. They're still trying to pull fans back. So I think through most generations, Flyers fandom know who Rick Tocchet is. I think Jack, he was around for portions of our fandom. I don't know if you guys can see. Can you see where I'm pointing here?
You just angle your camera up a little bit. I see legs.
Okay, so this is an autographed picture of Rick Tocchet. I'm not sure if you can see that whole thing or not, but just one of my favorite Flyers. And I know a lot of fans today haven't had the opportunity to watch Rick Tocchet play, and I doubt that they've gone back and watched highlights. Like, he really, as a player, he really kind of did embody what Philadelphia is. A grungy, tough guy that can also score and win. He's won multiple cups. I believe he's won with Pittsburgh and the Flyers. I'm sorry, did he win with the Flyers? They went to the cup.
No,
he went
to like two of them, but he didn't win.
Yeah, that's right. Sorry, he captained the team. So so getting away from that conversation a little bit for myself, what was I expecting? What was I looking for? I think I was looking for a coach who maybe didn't have a track record yet in the NHL. Somebody who was, given a fresh start. Okay, let's see what this guy can do kind of thing, And so I talked myself out of Tocchet as a coach. And believe me, there's going to be a period of time where I talk myself into Tocchet. Like, like you said, like, we're here. This is it. There's no reason to be angry and negative now. Like, this is just it. So let's give him a shot. But right now, I was looking for somebody with a blank slate kind of deal. And you see a team like Vancouver hire Adam Foote to be their new coach. He was an assistant under Tocchet, has never been a head coach in the National Hockey League. He was only a head coach, I believe, for the Kelowna Rockets, who was obviously a Canadian Hockey League team up there. And, I just wonder how fans would have felt about a hire like that, who's had no head coaching background yet in the NHL. And so another point. So I tried to come at this from a bunch of different ways. And if you want to interject at any point, Jack, feel free. The next thing I looked at was, okay, where is this team right now? Right. And they're just coming out of a Tortorella head coaching term where they're not ever going to find a head coach. And I mean this like respectfully, as difficult to deal with than John Tortorella. There's nobody that's ever going to come close. And so, I've seen stuff out there like Tocchet is a Tortorella light. Well, it's just not even close. It's not true. If you want to put a light at the end of Tocchet's name, I would go with a Craig Berube light, who the Flyers wanted to look. I've been told, I don't know if I mentioned it on the show. I'm sure I have. If Berube was available while the Flyers needed a coach, he would have been the guy like that. he would have been a no-brainer for them. He was the guy. And so when I see Tocchet, I see a guy that's kind of like Craig Berube in a lot of ways, in that he's easy to talk to. He gets along with pretty much everybody. He's just a people-y kind of guy, but he also has that, he draws a line, right? Like you can get along with Tocchet as long as you're doing what you need to do. But if you're screwing around, like, he needs to be the tough guy. And I think players respect that. At least I hope that they do. So, yeah, in that sense, that's fine to bring them in. Where was I going with that? Oh, where the Flyers are now. Does Tocchet make sense to bring in? And my initial thought was not really, because the coach that they hire today, in my opinion, is not going to be the coach that they win a cup with. I don't think the roster's ready, and I'm not sure how fast they can get it ready. And I don't want them to kind of rush things along now that they have the superstar in Michkov, now that they have a coach, so that kind of freaks me out a little bit. And then the last thing I wanted to mention in here was the style of play. There was one more thing that I'm drawing a blank on, but the style of play that Tocchet, typically deploys. Like, I think back to when he was head coach of the Phoenix Coyotes or the Arizona Coyotes, whatever they were at the time. Those teams were tough as hell to play against. Whenever they would come into Philly, the Flyers would have and I know the Flyers didn't have the best teams, but they were better than the Coyotes during those years, if I remember. Coyotes were a bitch to play against, man, and those were some tough Tocchet coach teams. You mentioned the Jack Adams Award the first year he coached Vancouver. There was a very strong team up there. So if we want to discredit that, I could understand that. But at the end of the day, he won it. Vancouver, I think, was third in points for the season. Numbers are numbers. And then the next year, everything kind of falls apart. There was really one more point I wanted to bring up, but I can't recall. So if you want to chime in here, Jack, I'll try to remember as you go on.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with basically large majority of what you said. One thing I like to point out is, Torts, they're not going to get another coach like Torts, never will, which is kind of why I thought he was perfect for the time he was here. So now we can move forward from that. But however, you were saying, is he the coach for now? I don't think so either. I think we're still in a rebuild. Well, we should be anyway. I mean, we're drafting 6th overall. We finished 4th. We should have been 4th. And it's like, I know we have Michkov, but like, are we really like prepared to turn the corner? We don't have a number 1 center. We don't even know if we have a number 2 center. We really don't have a number 1 defenseman. We really don't know what we have in Drysdale. What's going on with the goaltending? Like, sure, some of these could be Band-Aids and stopgaps, but nothing going long-term. We're hoping Zavragan or Bjornsson is the answer there, but we really don't know. And it's one of those things. It's like, I think they like the idea and wanted Tocchet so much that they didn't put a whole lot of thought into, like, is now the time or whatnot. But you also can't, because like, will he be available when they're ready to go, or somebody of that ilk? You don't know. They really wanted Berube last year, and it was kind of like one of those things like, yeah, Torts has only been here 2 years. Like, we're not there yet. And they kind of missed the boat on that. Maybe they felt they were going to miss the boat again and had to jump the gun. And, that's why they were so aggressive with an offer and needed to get him in now. I know in our ideal situation, they bring in somebody else. Either it's a stopgap, which doesn't really make sense on the surface, but sometimes these things have a way of working out. Like, for instance, like a Shaw or somebody like that who gets you 2-3 years and you build some more, and then boom, you're ready to add that coach and really turn the corner, especially after you start adding, theoretically, have they circled the calendar of 2026 free agency. But here, I mean, I guess things aren't always going to work out like that. I would have preferred the young coach. I was kind of very interested in Freshweiler. I was hoping they would look into more young coaches like that, like a Mitch Love or, somebody like that. Carl kind of pulled himself out of the running. But this definitely indicates that they are going to turn the corner. Now, I'm not saying they're going to go sign, or trade for some stud goalie and make some earth-shattering franchise moves. I just think when we talk about restricted free agency signing a stopgap goalie, maybe even some players, and go. I'm not even convinced Risto gets moved at all now, which I think would be a mistake. Doesn't have to be moved this offseason, but I look at the timeline and I look at some of the players' ages and where they should be when this team is ready to compete and actually be a contender. I do think there's a chance if all things go right and they get lucky with some draft picks and development and restricted free agents and offer sheets and trades, where he could be the coach that takes them there. But I really don't know. I was looking at all the coaches they've had. I think somebody was saying, another former Flyer. So Martinez kind of like posted all the coaches they've had that were all the coaches they had. And there's really only a handful that are former Flyers. But one thing I noticed is it has how long each coach lasted. Do you know who is the longest coach, the tenured coach they've ever had, and how many years it is?
No.
So if you're an older guy, I'm sure you'll jump right in. It's Fred Shiro, and it's 7 years, and he wasn't even fired. He got like a ridiculous offer to be like the coach GM of the Rangers, and kind of took it and ran. Like it's not Mike Keenan. Like he was only like 4 years, maybe 5. Pat Quinn was like 4 years. It's like. It is a 2 to 3 year thing is a massive average. I think Hackstall's towards the top of the list, but that tells you how goofy this organization was at 4 years. So I don't know if I see him seeing out this deal at 5 years. However, if they start turning a corner, maybe they could. So I'm not really sure. But the other thing on top of that, maybe that's not their plan. Maybe they're still thinking roster building. And Tocchet, from what I understand,
that's the point that I couldn't remember again.
Well, from what I understand, the players, once you get to know him, well, first off, he's just respected around the league. He just is. And the more you get to know him, the more I hear players like him. The more you talk to him, the more you like him, which is like the opposite of Torts, And right. I think it makes this a more desirable destination to certain free agent. It's like night and day with Torts. And because they have 2026 circled on their calendar, it would be nice to have him in general. And if you have to get him a year or two early, then you just do it, because at the end of the day, coaches come and go, but your players, your roster is the crux, the foundation of anything you're going to do. And they got some serious work to do. And 2026 is going to be big. Maybe even this offseason is going to be big, depending on offer sheets and trades. So I think they're coming at this in many more ways than just, this is the coach we think can mold these players and make them a contender. I think it's much deeper than that, and a lot of it's team building.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if you're right there, and that was the point that I couldn't recall. But if, like I said, and this might even sound pessimistic, you could tell me if you think I'm wrong, but they're not close to the goal yet. The goal was to compete, to be a Stanley Cup contender year in and year out, right? Like that was the goal that they said when this regime took over. They're not even close to that. And so Tocchet coming in now represents, for me, phase 2. Now we bring in talent, and we need to recruit talent, right? Because we're not a Florida or a Vegas or a Nashville that can just recruit guys just because of where, the location of the team or, the money side of things, so the plan is there. The vision is there. They're creating cap, they're saving up their money for when it's time to spend. They're stockpiling draft picks, so they can make big deals. They can draft players. They can sign free agents. They can, they have all these picks for RFAs. And I just put a video out. I think it dropped a few hours ago of, I think 10 available restricted free agents. And, maybe we'll get into that later on in the show. Maybe we'll save it for another one. We'll see. But if you haven't watched it after the show tonight, make sure you go check it out. But there's a lot of options. And if phase 2 is to acquire talent, and you think the head coach can help you do that, then I guess Tocchet really does make a lot of sense over a guy like, Furschweiler, who maybe a lot of older, more in their prime NHL guys might be, who the hell is this guy? Like, I don't want to play for a college head coach, or where the hell's Jay Woodcroft been for the last 4 years, or whatever it's been, kind of thing. You know what I mean? Whereas Tocchet has been out there. Players respect him because he's done it in the NHL. Vets, young guys. So I guess if I'm trying to sell myself on Tocchet, these are the things that I'm keeping in mind, but the next thing is these things have to be done. Go out and get talent. This isn't a coach that comes to mind for me that's going to develop young kids, so what's the next phase here? The phase, whether you agree with it or not. And I think, Jack, you're on board with this more than I am, is to go out and acquire talent and to start building this roster up, right?
Yes, absolutely. And this comment here from Tom, I'm not sure if I've seen him in the chat before, so thank you. That's where the Jack Adams stuff comes in for me. And I'm like, without competent goaltending, I don't care who you are, you're not winning the Jack Adams. So that just goes that this team is very much still building. And if they felt like, look, the draft lottery balls haven't exactly gone our way, like we need to establish something that could get other talent here on top of just Michkov and, Keith Jones, I guess. And I think this is the way to do it. Hold on, let's put this up here. Oh, you're muted.
Sean C. If James shaved, I think he could pass his Tocchet. Take the podium on Friday. Yeah. We got the same haircut. That's for sure.
Your head definitely needs to be a little bit bigger, but you're significantly younger. So
yes, thank you.
And I agree. I love the way he played going. I watched, I have a lot of tapes of there's some really good montages of their Stanley Cup seasons in the 80s. And he's like, especially the first one when they still had Lindbergh, he was a huge part of it. I think he was a rookie and he's throwing down with anybody. He's putting up points. He's a disruptor. Like he's exactly what you'd want. Like if it's a typical Flyers player. So don't get me wrong. The idea of Tocchet on the ice, like I love that. I just don't like anything he did when he left Philly and went to Pittsburgh. Like you can't talk me out of that. But look, he chose us. He's the head coach now. Today, since it like became official, or as close to as official as it can get, I've been talking myself more into like just not bitching about it for the next 5 years or however long. And there are some things to like. To be honest, the free agent destination thing has got to be the main one. But like, it is tough. You look at his record, and I kind of throw out the Tampa years, because that was a bad team in 08, 09, 9, 10. Arizona was a bad team, maybe not terrible, but he got a lot out of them, including a playoff run. And then there's the Vancouver years, and obviously that first one is the best. But his overall like winning percentage, it's hovering right around 500 or under. Maybe I'm not 100% sure, but he does have that.
I think it's just a little bit over.
Just over.
Yeah.
And you know what? Because some of these other seasons where he's down below 400, it wasn't a full season. So, and like to me, for that to be like, how could this guy be so highly touted? That's what I can't wrap my brain around that. So I'm trying not to look at the record. I'm trying to look at everything else and understand why he was there at one. Because if you ask the average fan now, it's going to be, it's going to just be Flyers, going to be typical Flyers. Oh, and you brought this up earlier. You said the new brand of orange or whatever. Like, how? You got all former Flyers in there, and you really can't argue that. I mean, they got Briere, Jones, Leclerc, Patrick Sharp. I mean, that's kind of silly. They barely played here. But now they bring back Tocchet as the head coach. I get it. To me, it's a coincidence because Tocchet's been all over. He's played for like 6 different franchises and coached for like 4 different franchises, not including his assistant. Because I know he had been an assistant with a couple of teams like Pittsburgh and I forget who he started with. He was an assistant with
Colorado.
That's it. Thank you. Oh, there it is, though. So he's been around. He obviously has connections and whatnot, much like Keith Jones. And also, you said earlier that Foote, who was his defensive assistant in with Vancouver, is now the head coach in Vancouver. So the odds of, in my opinion, the odds of Shaw staying on just went up because that was his guy, and his guy staying in Vancouver. So that's a good thing. I will take that.
You would think somebody had a podcast. I want to say it was Darren Drager was talking about Tocchet potentially bringing on Luke Richardson. Not sure if that would be to replace Rocky Thompson, since Richardson was he was a defender in the NHL.
Right.
Having said that, Rocky Thompson was an enforcer coaching the power play, so who the hell really knows? But Luke Richardson's name was thrown out there, and we'll
Another
see.
former Flyer.
See so that's what I mean. The new
And that
era
stuff
of
doesn't bother
orange,
me. I say it as a joke. It doesn't really bother me, but go ahead.
right? The new era of orange really means just getting back to the roots. Is what it looks like to me.
Oh, you mean when they like made the playoffs perennially and we're at the top of the league?
Well, it's like it's like, so usually good businesses will hire and promote from within, or they'll bring in people they're familiar with. Do you know what I mean? Like that's just
true.
how good businesses, good companies run. And I think what we're seeing with sports franchises, and the Flyers aren't the only one that does this, right? Like Manny Malhotra was top contestant, considered to be the number one candidate as of yesterday for the Vancouver job, and they ended up going with Adam Foote. So the Flyers aren't the only team that does this. Joe Sakic was the GM for a while in Colorado. Like, you know what I mean? So I think since we're in the Philly market, and that's all we really see on Twitter and stuff,
Chris
everyone
Drury's
goes up
the
in
GM
arms.
of the Rangers, and he played for the
Right.
Rangers. Like, it's
Exactly,
not
yeah.
just us,
Right.
but it's just it's such low hanging fruit for people who just want to constantly be negative with the team, but also at the same time, I can see it being a little frustrating because when you push
the way
back
of the
against
world, man. It's just the way shit works. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't know. If you have a good organization, and you're churning out these guys, I think companies and organizations and teams always look for good people first. And I don't know. I don't know Rick Tocchet personally. I can only go by what I see and hear. Sounds like an easy enough guy to get along with. When I see him on TNT, he looks like a personable guy, a guy that you can, have a couple beers with, or you're not going to be afraid to go into his office, and talk to him about things. Whereas maybe guys before were a little bit intimidated, or maybe they just didn't even want to talk to Torts. I don't know. But it sounds like he's going to leave. He's a guy that will leave lines of communication open, and maybe makes it easy for these guys to talk to him, kind of thing. So yeah.
Fingers crossed there. If all that comes out of this hire is that the roster gets better, I mean, I'm sure we'll take it. Now, they got to make the playoffs a little bit here. Can't go a full 5 years and not even scratch the playoffs. But first and foremost, the roster has to get better. And if having him as the head coach does wonders for that, then you really got to consider it.
Yeah. There was a point. So if you could compare, so for the people, and I don't know if it's fair to do this, but Rick Tocchet's game back when he played, and maybe there's some guys with better memories in the comments, or maybe you even remember, Jack, because I remember like Rick Tocchet was one of my favorite players growing up watching hockey, but I'm not going to sit here and tell you like I remember watching his games. Like I don't. But I remember I enjoyed watching him play. And if I had to compare him to some of the players today, some of those guys might be like guys like Matty Tkachuk, like Brad Marchand, like Sam Bennett, who's mentioned in the chat here. I don't want to say he's a Tom Wilson type guy because I don't recall him in that sense. Oh, there you go. Shadow actually said Tom Wilson, but like this is a guy that the people who are watching the show now would have enjoyed watching back then, I think, so we'll see. Maybe he ends up, churning some guys out like this, and the Flyers become a tough team that can score and win games. There you go. Wayne Simmons.
So that's who came to mind for me. Yeah. He just would fight anybody, man. I mean, I saw him fight yesterday or today, him fighting Wendell Clark, I mean, just some old, I'm not gonna say, I wouldn't be surprised if like an old heavyweight fighter like Provost or something he was fighting or whatnot. But he's not really afraid of anything or to do anything. And he's the kind of, he would have been like, if I watched during the 80s, if I was alive, he probably would have been one of my favorite players, hands down. I like goal scoring too. So, but a guy that can play and give you all that other stuff, that's exactly what you need.
Yep. Totally. And, we'll eventually we'll talk more. Actually, maybe later on in the show. We're already a half an hour in, so I kind of think we maybe reached our limit on the talk. I'm sure it'll come up. I mean, the topics that we have left over are all related to Tocchet now, obviously, because we have the draft coming, we have free agency coming. We mentioned offer sheets. Sam Bennett, who's mentioned in the chat, he's a free agent, I believe, this summer. Going to get paid. So, I mean, let's kind of talk what's next now, Jack. We have about a month and a half until the draft. What's the focus now? Obviously, they need to get him as assistant coaches and whatnot. That's all. That's kind of the boring stuff. But what's next? What should we be looking for next, do you think?
Well, it brings up an interesting question because, yeah, you got to fill out the coaching staff, and then it's the draft. It's the draft and what you're going to do there. My question to you is, do you think Tocchet should have any kind of say in who they take in this draft, particularly in their top 7 picks, which all happen to be top 50 and really in the first round and really 6 overall?
That's a good question. And I always kind of wondered how this stuff worked. I think Torts had too much input. If I'm the GM and I'm hiring a new coach, I'm kind of going over my plan for what what I want to do with the roster. And then I'm looking for a coach that can fit my idea, right? So I'm going to assume that while they were interviewing coaches and talking to Tocchet, they laid out the plan. This is what we want to do. Is this something that you can work with? I'm not going to I don't think Tocchet will have a hand in who they pick necessarily. I'm going to assume they kind of laid out, this is kind of where we want to go with things. From what I hear, they let the scouts do their thing, and they let Brent Flair do his job. Brent Flair made the Luchenko pick last year. Because I know we all want to go after Danny for draft picks and stuff, but Brent Flair's in charge of that stuff. Luchenko was Flair's guy. They went with Luchenko. So I guess that was the long-winded answer. Short-winded, no, I don't think Tocchet will really have much input on who they take. What do you think?
Well, I agree. Nor should he. Again, I said it earlier. Coaches come and go. So having a guy who just comes in and being like, "Yeah, I really want Denoyer," you know what I mean? And Frondell's available or something like that. I would be pissed. I'd be like, "Yeah, you could be fired in 2 years. Like, why?" Like, yeah. So no, I'm glad we're on the same page there. So to me, let him fill out his staff. Hope Shaw can stay on. Then you got to focus on the draft, and you got to focus hard because there's some questions coming out now about Brent Flair. How much do you really like his drafting? Because I can't really give him Michkov. We all knew Michkov was good. And he pretty much told Briere, I'm playing for you. So outside of that, and his first year was probably 2019 because he came over with Fletcher. That was the selecting York over Caulfield twice draft. But they did get Bobby Brink. And there have been some late round guys they have grabbed that nobody's really panned out in the NHL yet. But there's some, some guys that we have high hopes for, Bump being one of them. So it's going to be a big year for him. If you have this many picks, and I seriously doubt they make them all, but you got to hit on a couple. You have to. And this draft alone, you have 7 picks in the top 50, and you say you keep them all or you move up, like you got to hit on some of them, especially at 6. So yeah, that's by far the next thing they need to do. I want them to have potential restricted or potential offer sheets lined up if they have the cojones to try it, or just make a deal with somebody, just trade with somebody. It's like, look, this guy's probably going to get offer sheeted. Why don't we just talk? Let's just make a deal, and we can do it this year's draft or these draft picks or whatever. And hopefully they find a way to keep their 2026 first round pick. But your video came out with the different numbers on the arbitrations. And some of those numbers, like I see some of these guys, I'm like, I don't know if any of these guys are getting $5 million yet. Maybe they are, I don't know. But I think there's a way they can do a trade here, an offer sheet there, and still keep their 2026 first round pick. Ultimately, we'll see. But I really hope that they have a plan and they have an idea of how they want to attack the draft, what picks they have set aside for potential trades, and do they have deals kind of already in the works that they kind of are waiting for this to happen or waiting for until they can make a trade or certain players on the board or something like that. So I hope they're not going into this, blind. I really hope that they're prepared for several situations, and it's all about team building. It's all about getting the right players, and fingers crossed that they don't need to move mountains this offseason, but I do think they need to do something.
Yeah, and how about this for something? So this is a super chat request from Ted E. Teddy, thank you very much. Ted E. asks, Jack, you guys think Rick Tocchet would ask Danny to trade for Hughes possibly? I think that's what that's asking there, and I assume that that's Quinn Hughes. So Quinn Hughes has been quoted as saying he loved Rick Tocchet. He gave him a lot of credit for helping him with his career. He's one of the highest scoring defensemen in the NHL. I don't know, especially when you consider what the Vancouver GM said about the Hughes brothers eventually wanting to play together. I'm not sure that Philly would be a destination for Quinn Hughes. What do you think, Jack?
Blood is thicker than water, Jim, and Tocchet could be the greatest coach in the world. He's going to New Jersey or he's staying in Vancouver. Unfortunately, that's it. And I really don't see Jack and Luke going to Vancouver, so most likely he's come to New Jersey. I don't know how it happens, but we've seen stranger things. And I do not see him coming to Philly to be division rivals with his brothers. So, unfortunately, I don't see that happening. And there is no chance in hell that all three players are coming to Philly for obvious reasons. So that's one of those dreams we're just going to have to let go.
I mean, technically, they could trade for Quinn. They could offer sheet Luke, and maybe that entices Jack. Who knows?
It forces Devil's hands because they won't match that offer sheet or anything.
Yeah.
Hey, you do with the Carolina Hurricanes, they were ranting too. How'd that turn out?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I don't know if they should play the hostage negotiation scheme.
Yeah, I do wonder though, because I've always been kind of against the offer sheet things. But what I learned today is each team in the Metro has some pretty big RFA guys out there. And we'll get into this more as the offseason goes here. But if you want to start a war, there are some teams in the Metro you can go to war with. They have some pretty enticing players out there, like Noah Dobson, mentioned Luke Hughes, Keandre Miller. I know he had a down year, but there are some D out there if the Flyers wanted to start a war.
That would be ballsy. That would be big balls Briere for sure. Don't see it happening, but you never know. Let's start with an offer sheet in general anywhere, and then we'll move on to starting the wars within the division.
Yeah. Okay. So let's move on a little bit here. So we were kind of talking what's next. Well, obviously the draft. We mentioned it's a month and a half away. We're seeing all kinds of mock drafts and things like that. I think last week we touched on Brady Martin a little bit, as Craig Button has him projected to go to the Flyers. And, usually you'd say, big deal. It's just another mock draft. Well, Craig Button nailed the Jet Luchanko pick last season for the Flyers, and we were all kind of like, who the hell is Jet Luchanko, and why are the Flyers picking him in this position? And then fortunately or unfortunately, however you want to look at it, I think Luchanko led all rookies in assists in the AHL playoffs. But the Flyers ended up taking Luchanko. Now he has him taking Brady Martin. And, without having watched a lot of tape on Brady Martin, there's one name, Jack, that I kind of see floated around in comps. Have you seen this name?
What was the name again? I'm sorry.
No, so the name that I see a lot of is Mike Richards. And, we're talking, about how Rick Tocchet used to play. Mike Richards, and I'm sure a lot of people remember Mike Richards. I mean, he would give 110%, leave it all out on the ice. And people want to compare, I don't know if I would necessarily comp him, but a lot of people are saying, oh, this sounds like a Mike Richards kind of guy. And hey, maybe he is. It's hard to say. There's not a lot of those guys out there.
Yeah, Mike Richards was a late teens draft, not sixth overall. So if that's
in a very good draft, though,
an incredible draft for sure. I don't see the upside with Martin to draft him that high. I think it's definitely a fan favorite, much like Mike Richards, but I think you're like already cutting yourself short on the legitimate top line center if you go Martin. Like I don't see it, and I would love and I agree with that. I think he's like one of the best body checkers in the draft, and he'll be one of the best in the league. And that's great. And I love his work ethic, and he's going to do a lot of things that Flyers fans love, except be offensively competent enough to be a top line center, particularly with Michkov. And that is what we need more than anything. So if you're taking that, you're kind of ignoring your top need.
Yeah, for sure. A couple comments here. Want to get to a compliment for one of our fellow viewers, Travi Ballin. Ted E is a legend. Yes, he is. Rora chiming in. If the Flyers somehow can get Higgins and Ravensburger in the first round, Jack, she believes, I believe this is a she, I apologize. I believe it would be a fantastic draft for the Flyers. What do you think, Jack? Higgins, if he's there, and Ravensburger, a goaltender.
I mean, Higgins alone, and I'm jumping for joy. Because I was hoping to get him at 4. At 6 now, like it really seems unlikely. So I would be over the moon for that. And you never draft enough goalies.
Have you seen some of these mocks about the New York Islanders trading back to draft Higgins?
Because Higgins is from Long Island.
Yeah.
I think that would be pretty stupid, if you ask me. But the one thing I'll say, and I don't see them trading back or taking him at 1. But the one thing I'll say is the last time they drafted number 1 overall, you know who they took?
Who's that?
Tavares. And ultimately, he wound up going elsewhere to his hometown. And this is not the Rangers or, Chicago. It's the Islanders. It's not exactly, a free agent flock destination or a team that they've been pretty bad almost my entire life. And I understand before my life, they were pretty good, but for my entire 37 years on this earth, they've been pretty much a joke outside of a good 2-3 year run with a, plethora of third line players that just overpowered. And it's kind of like, from that perspective, I can see them really wanting to select Higgins because he's theirs for life. He's not, and he was at one point the number 1 overall pick. I don't see them. You have an opportunity to take Schaefer, and they're already iffy on Dobson, a number 1 franchise defenseman or a fringe top line center. Sure, it could hit. I don't think you do that. I'd be shocked, but maybe they get a lucrative enough offer where they move back and they do it. I don't see it. I don't see the team that would jump up. So Higgins is probably he's going to go between 3 and 6, right? So which team is doing that?
I'm going to tell you what.
Go ahead.
If you're the Flyers, you need to be circling the New York Islanders. I know they're an in-division rival and whatnot, but they have a lot of stuff that's not really set. Is Matt Barzal happy up there? I don't think he is. Noah Dobson, whatever Lamoriello's beef was with Noah Dobson, is that still a thing? Did that kind of crater the relationship up there? So now they have a top 6 forward in Barzal. I think he still plays center up there, I think. Does he want to be there? They have a top pair defenseman in Dobson, a top offensive defenseman. Does he want to be there? They have the number 1 overall pick. Do you want to draft James Higgins? Do you want to guarantee that you get a player that wants to play for your franchise for a long, long time? The Flyers need to be asking these questions. Do you want to move any of these guys? Do you want to move back to 6? They have the ammunition to get it done. So the Islanders are a team that I would circle. I know being an in-division rival makes that a little bit, fuzzy, but the Islanders are a team that I would watch.
The only thing is, if I'm the Islanders, do I really think Higgins lasts till 6? Am I willing to trade? Because it's not like you can trade later in the draft. You have to make the trade right away.
True. Mm-hmm.
So you're giving up Schaefer or Misa and obviously you're getting something in return, but then you're just kind of hoping that he's there at 6. Because if he's not, then you're like, oh shit. So.
Yeah, you're right. I don't think there's any shot, but that's a team though. They need to be calling almost every other day, like, hey, Matt Barzal, hey, Noah Dobson, hey, what are you doing with that number 1 pick?
I agree. It's a shame that they're a division rival, to be honest.
Yep. All right. So, yeah, we talked Brady Martin. Doesn't sound like a lot of people. It just seems like whatever the fans want, the Flyers kind of do the opposite of late. We're talking the coach that nobody really was excited for Tocchet. I don't want to say a lot of people didn't want him because I did see a poll. I think Flyers Nation put a poll out, and I figured, what's the point of putting one out myself since they have such a large Flyers following that they could probably get a more accurate poll. And I think the poll was, would you be excited or would you be okay with Rick Tocchet as head coach of the Flyers? And the poll was like 52 to 48 or 51 to 49% yes. And I think there were like 2,000, 3,000 votes, something like that. And I got to tell you, from what I was seeing on my timeline, I was surprised by that outcome. Right?
Yeah.
So,
sure.
And now we're talking about Brady Martin. It's like, can we
That's
just go?
To me, that's so I get what you're saying, and it does seem like they're doing the opposite of a lot of things. But for me, it's like I could wrap my head around the Tocchet hire at least a little bit. If they were to take Martin, I almost couldn't. It's like if we're like some of the people holding the gate back from the angry mob, and if they draft Martin at 6 with certain guys available, I'm just letting the gate open and all right, just storm the Capitol at that point. Because like, are you kidding me? Like that would be the opposite of what they're trying to sell us. It's like you're going to go and draft a guy like this high in hopes he could be this guy. Like, come on. Why are we going with the high floor? We need high ceilings. We need somebody who can play with Michkov. That would really set me ablaze if they had like the Noyer or Frondel available and they still chose Martin.
Yeah. I think we'd probably feel how we felt last year. Yeah, Bouillon sitting right there.
Yeah.
And look, if we want to get angry about that, go ahead. Right. And this is how I am. Bouillon was obviously the guy that I wanted. Right. And for most of last year, all I was doing was pumping up this kid's tires. He was so fun to watch. He was like the youngest kid in the NCAA or at least on University of Denver. And he was just balling out. Didn't matter what team he played for, whether it was the U.S. National Development Team, whether it was for Denver. He was doing his thing, and he looked good doing it. And so magically he falls into the Flyers' lap. They trade back. Minnesota takes Bouillon, and they take Luchenko, a guy that, look, we didn't know who the hell Jet Luchenko was. So then we start, and what's the term, Jack, when you're held hostage and you start like sympathizing with your captors?
Oh, it's you fall in love with your captor and whatnot. It's Stockholm syndrome.
So I think we start to develop like Stockholm syndrome. the minute they do something, it's like, all right, wait a second here. Let's see why they did that. You know what? Like Bouillon, maybe he wouldn't have signed with the Flyers because he had the same agent, or he played with Gauthier, whatever it is. Like, I think we try to understand from their perspective instead of getting angry. Instead, just make the damn pick. Just take the best player, right? And so when Button came out with that Brady Martin pick, maybe this kid's a player, right? But like, let's not talk ourselves out of the guys who are already up there that have been scouted for multiple seasons and that are being put at the top of these draft boards, for multiple reasons. I'm just a little bit worried that Brent Flair might have smartest guy in the room syndrome.
Yeah.
That freaks me out a little bit.
We saw it with York, didn't we? He didn't pass on Caulfield once. He passed on him twice. Yeah. That is definitely smart. And Boldy was also a name that doesn't get talked about enough in that draft. That was right in that range as well and was not picked. So, I mean, yeah, and I look at it, what he has done, and let's look at his track record. I mean, with the Flyers at least, he took Brink later, which was nice in that 2019 draft. York's a good player. He's not, in my opinion, Boldy and Caulfield are much, much better. 2020 was Forster. So I know that's not, for a later round pick. That's good. 2021, they traded the pick and they took Tulamala in the second round. He's okay. He's got to stay healthy.
Look who can you see who went directly after Tuamala by any chance?
Well, you could, yeah, I believe it was Wyatt Johnson or somebody for Dallas, right?
Yeah, I think it was the kid that just got traded,
Stankoven. Yeah, somebody good. But Dallas, like they're ridiculous. They're like most teams don't draft like Dallas. Like they're ridiculous. A lot of teams passed on Stankoven or Wyatt Johnson or whoever. So, but yeah, it does suck because it's like right there. And then it's like 2023's Michkov and Bonk. So for me, it's like we'll see what Bonk becomes because Michkov's a slam dunk. I can't give him credit for that one, except for not trading up, which they tried to do. Bonk's going to be the one I really zone in on. And then Luchenko's a massive one as well. So we're going to have to see. And this is another draft. Like, I really hope they trust these guys because even in his time with Minnesota, like I can't really point to anybody and be like, wow, they really nailed that pick, except for like Kaprizov, who was a 5th round flyer, hoping the guy had a chance at coming over. Don't get me wrong, he's much better than we thought he would be, and he deserves all the credit in the world for that pick. But he didn't even get to see the fruits of his labors because they got fired out of there before he came around. So I can't really point to anybody and be like, yeah, he's really great at drafting. I think he usually hits on his first, maybe some seconds, but not like true superstars. I know they had Brent Burns. I don't know if that regime drafted him though. I know that regime traded him, but I don't know if they drafted him. So it's like, I don't know. I just don't know. I think they get a lot of they'll get NHL guys, but they're not superstars.
Yeah, it's almost like he makes and don't get me wrong, because if I'm taking a player with a high floor opposed to a player with a low floor, high ceiling, I'll probably go with the safe pick, like 95% of the time. But it's almost looking like that's kind of his pedigree, to go with the safe pick. And yeah, a lot of guys maybe are developing and they're making the AHL, but what we're finding is when they get to the NHL, we have a bunch of 2nd and 3rd and 4th line guys. You know what I mean? And a bunch of middle pair D.
And
we don't have the guys that are going to take them over the top.
There. That's purgatory for you right there. You need the one thing this team is missing is a center with the high ceiling potential. So that's therefore these Martins and guys they're great later in the draft, and I understand they're probably not going to last. But like, you cannot take a high floor guy at 6, unless the floor is superstar, which it's not. Like, you can't be safe here. This is not the time to be safe based on your roster needs. You cannot be safe. I wonder if they're just so worried that they need to hit on the pick at all. Because if you go, well, he's still an NHL player, it's not like you swung and missed completely. But I'm sorry, that's not what is needed for this team. We ain't going anywhere if they don't at least try. And that's what I'm nervous about for this draft. And we're going to find out. I'll be very upset if they stay pat at 6 and because one of Frondell, potentially Haggins, and even Porter Martone is going to be available at 6. To not trade back and take Martin, which would still probably piss me off a little bit, and to just take him over those other guys would infuriate me. That is a mistake. I've already come around on Denoyer, and maybe he's not there. But to do this because your guy's not there, I don't like that, not one bit. And yeah, I could be wrong. I'm no draft expert. What I am an expert is not winning Stanley Cups, and it's been over 50 years.
All right, so we can kind of keep it in the draft/trade area here. Teddy, once again, you're a legend.
Real quick. Oh, shit. Sorry, I had to answer this real quick. So I'm a little under the weather with my allergies, and this is not a soda. It's a buble. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, back to Teddy here. Super chat. Teddy, you're a legend. Thank you again. Sharks are open for business. Who and what trade for Misa? Look, I don't know, but I can tell you that Cam York's from California, so I would start with Cam York. Obviously, the 6th would have to be involved, and then probably a prospect. I would give all that up for Misa right now.
So, wait, what was it again? A prospect 6 and what?
Cam York.
Would you give Luchenko, Cam York in 6th?
I don't know if I would do that.
It's going to be something to make you uncomfortable. How about both? I mean, I don't think they do it, but
I'm the only reason I'm not uncomfortable with York is because I don't really care for him all that much.
Oh yeah, I
as
would
a
trade
player.
York to move up from Misa. Of course, I would do it. Of course, I would do it.
Still a top 4 defenseman, though. You know.
Yeah, how many is a dime a dozen, Jimmy? And this one's about to want to get paid too, so keep that in mind.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I would do almost whatever it takes, because that's it. You know, and obviously there's a chance it might not pan out, but you got to have balls at some point. You got to roll the dice. Fortune favors the bold. All right. Otherwise, Purgatory is going to have a lot to say, and I'm not going to have much to defend.
Yeah. So it sounds like we would both be open for something to trade up for Misa.
You didn't tank, so you have to consider situations like this. You did not bottom out and tank and put yourself in a position to truly be in the running for one of these guys. So you seriously have to consider doing something like this. Ultimately, I don't think it gets done. I really don't. No team. I think the teams trading down ultimately don't want to do it. It's almost like they want to see. Remember, that only makes sense to you and me. We had a guy in our fantasy league that would always like float, like when Antonio Brown was at his like peak. He'd always be like, "What would you give me for Brown?" And you'd tell him, it'd be like, "Yeah, I wouldn't do that." And then that would be the end of the conversation. You know what I mean? Like nothing is ever going to feel comfortable enough. They just like getting their ego stroked or something. And I can't think of a time a top 3 pick has been traded. Can you? I have to go back to the Sedins, right? Because they were 2 and 3, right? It went Stahl, Henrik, and Daniel Sedin, I believe. That was what, 2002? Like, and I don't even know how Vancouver actually acquired the other pick. Like, I would assume it's a trade, but I really don't know. I don't remember. It's that long ago. So these picks, they don't get moved. So again, until it happens, and it's going to be a boatload. You want to be that team who does it, and you get fleeced. You move down from Misa to, I don't know, Frondell or something, and you get fleeced in the process, you know, value-wise. So I just don't see it happening.
Yeah, we'll see. It's kind of, and I wanted to flash these numbers up real quick just in case, for whatever reason, if you guys didn't watch the RFA show yet, I'll flash these up. But to me, you know, top picks being moved in a draft is kind of like offer sheets. Like they just don't happen all that often, right? And both topics of conversation. Here are the offer sheet numbers. I'll just flash them up here real quick. Let me take Dan's comment off. So there you go. And so if the Flyers are looking for, let's say, a top line center or a guy that they think can be a top line center for them, you're likely at least giving up a first round pick because you're paying anywhere between 4.6 and let's just say 11 for the sake of this thing. So you're giving up at least a first round pick, and at most you could probably see them giving up 2 firsts, a second, and a third, right? Like I don't foresee them overpaying anybody over 11.7 million. Do you?
No.
Yeah.
God, no. Who the hell? No.
So, I mean, if I'm so the guy that's popping into my mind right now is like a Mason McTavish. If he's going to be a top 6 center for you, and you think he's going to be with you for the long haul, you're probably going to give him a long, like let's just say 7x7, right? So you're giving up a first, second, third round pick for a Mason McTavish kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Right.
So you know, and that's assuming that Anaheim won't match your offer.
Real quick, let me read this to you. So it wasn't 2002, it was 99. Here's the breakdown of the trades, plural trades, that Burke had to do to get the second and third. So I believe they already had the 3rd overall pick. So they acquired the 4th overall pick. Burke traded defenseman Brian McCabe and a future first-round pick to Chicago in exchange for their 4th. Then he traded the 4th along with 2 later round picks to Tampa for the 1st overall pick. He then traded the 1st overall pick to the Atlanta Thrashers in exchange for the 2nd overall pick. And that's how he wound up with 2nd and 3rd overall picks. So I guess that would have been Kovalchuk, Jeff, maybe. But like that took a flurry of trades to put himself in the position to draft there, and one of which he already had, and he already had a top 4, what was it? I deleted the thing. A top pick himself. I don't see anything like that happening in today's day and age. That's 4 trades that took place to land that. And he actually traded up to the 1st, only to trade back down. Like those days are over, if you ask me. I don't see that happening at all.
Yeah. So I'll say I agree. I'll say this, and I'm sure we say this every year. If there was a draft where top 5 picks could move, this might be the one, because I just think that I don't know. Maybe teams are going to look for next year, or maybe they'll be okay with taking multiple picks later on in the draft if it means moving back a couple picks. Like this isn't this draft. I feel like we say this every other year, kind of thing. This draft is not as strong. It is a top 6 draft, but the talent significantly falls after the first 2, even 3 picks. Like we're talking Schaefer, Misa, Hagens, and then you have guys like Frundell, Denoyer, Martone. You know what I mean? So it falls significantly after 2 and 3, I think, and then it drops to another tier after 5 and 6. So I don't know. We'll see how things play out. Like you're saying, the likelihood, and history will prove that, of teams trading down from top 1, 2, 3 picks is just not likely. All right. Last big topic of the night here.
Sorry, I was on mute.
Yeah, it's all right. Last big topic of the night here we have is, let me share this. I'm sure everyone has seen it by now. Matvei Michkov was in some sort of accident last night. Now, from what I gather, and who knows what's true and what's not, because this seems a little shady, Jack. Have you looked into this at all?
A little bit. I'm going to see if I have any notes still.
What it sounds like to me from what I've gathered is that Michkov was a passenger in a car rented under his name. Whether that's true or not, that he was the passenger, because when there's accidents, people always switch seats and stuff like that. So he wrecked a car that he rented from a car rental company in, I believe it was the United Arab Emirates or Dubai, whatever the hell. Oh, it says Dubai right here. And the car rental company, I'm going to assume, knew who he was pissed that he just wrecked one of their cars. They were withholding his passport, and there are reports that they were trying to extort money from him.
100,000.
That's right. So that's a lot of money. I'm not sure. This car looks like it's $100,000, maybe more. So there, all we can do is go off rumors and what's being reported. But at the very least, Michkov was involved in this in some way, whether he was driving, whether he was in the car, whether he wasn't. His name is connected to this, Jack. What do you make of this?
Yeah, I don't like it, but it sounds like it was a situation where I also read that he's really not old enough to rent a car.
Yeah.
And like it just seemed like he was in a situation where this company could take advantage of him, and they like confiscated his passports and whatnot, which is technically illegal. And they were just trying to get a quick cash grab off him, and it sucks. And I hope it's a reason for him to just come back here and stay in the United States, where it's a lot safer. It's a shame. It's not just certain people who do this to other people. There's companies that do this. It's probably not the first sports person they try doing something to. Shady. I hate it. I hate to see his name wrapped up in it. You got Canadian fans and their crap now. And I just buy a house in the United States and stay here.
Yeah. Just stay in the States. Apparently the Russian guys like Dubai. I've never been. So sounds like DJ said he wasn't exactly sightseeing in Yellowstone. Dubai is for other things. I assume he means partying, hanging out, clubbing, things like that. He's a young kid. He should be, he's going to be doing that stuff. He's 19, 20 years old. So yeah, I mean, I'd be doing the same thing if I was his age. I don't know about being in Dubai, driving those kind of cars. So I get, maybe if I was making that kind of money, Jack,
Yeah, well, we don't know how to react if we had that kind of money. So is what it is.
Sean C. has a comment up here. The French-Canadian article on this was pathetic. The whole province is just going to stay bitter forever.
I don't understand Montreal fans at all, because we had the exact parallel opposite thing happen, and we didn't act that way towards them. We skipped on Caulfield twice and took York, and the very next pick they took Caulfield. we didn't turn around and saying how much Caulfield sucked and how stupid, Montreal fans are. We got mad at our general manager and our ownership. The same exact thing happens with Michkov, and all of a sudden Michkov's a shitty teammate. He sucks, and Flyers fans are a-holes. Like, I don't understand it. Like, it's the same exact situation, and they redirect their anger at us for some reason. It's the dumbest. It's pathetic, honestly. It's really, truly pathetic, and it just makes no sense. Take it out on your organization because a Michkov and Demidov combo would be absolutely insane, and that's their GM's fault, not ours.
Yeah, for sure. All right. I mean, could do a whole thing about speaking of French Canadians, did you see they did a little video of Briere and Jonesy and Hilferty, I don't know why I said Hilferty that way, calling Sean Couturier to let him know that they hired Rick Tocchet. Did you see this?
So I started to, and then I realized that Danny Briere was talking in French, and I was just like, I don't have time for this.
Well, I was like, I knew Couturier had the French Canadian last name, obviously.
Yeah.
I didn't know that he was like French Canadian. Like he speaks French. I didn't know that. Did you?
That Briere spoke French?
Well, Briere was speaking French to Couturier. Couturier speaks French.
No, so I knew Couturier did because of the province that he grew up in, and I also knew that Briere did because that was one of the only reasons he was in serious consideration for the GM job in Montreal, because that's a big part of their culture up there, being able to speak French. So.
Yeah, Briere I knew, but when Couturier answered the phone I assume he
basically French, yeah.
I assume he knew it was Briere, obviously, but he answered in French and I was like, holy shit, like Couturier is actually French Canadian? Like, because I knew he was born in Arizona and he was raised in Canada, but I'm like, wait a second, French is his first language? I had no idea. So, yeah, just surprised me.
Yeah, no, I mean, again, I only watched 2 seconds because I can't follow this. There's no subtitles, so I can't.
My first thought was, hey, buddy, we're on camera here, so be careful what you say. We're just going to tell you that we hired Tocchet, and then.
Yeah, that's a good point. Although that would have been great if you could decipher that in French. You'd be like, whoa.
I saw the news. What the fuck? You hired another bald guy?
You know that they're the ice, the light deflects off the ice and their head. Sorry, Jim.
No, none taken. All right, we're coming to the end of our show here tonight, boys and girls. We want to thank you all for hanging out. Teddy, thank you for the super chats. A lot of new names in the chat tonight. We always appreciate that. It's always good seeing new names. Always good seeing the regulars as well. We appreciate you guys. So we want to thank you all for tuning in. If you enjoyed our episode tonight, make sure you give us a subscribe. Help us on our quest for now 5,000 YouTube subscribers. We hit 1,000. We want to hit our goal of 5,000 by next June. We think we can do it. We're going to need your guys' help. Also, leave a like, leave a comment. It helps with the YouTube algorithm. So if you guys could do that for us, it would mean a lot. You can obviously watch us on YouTube, listen to us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Set alerts so you're first to know when we drop a new show. For all of our latest episodes, articles, and updates, you can head over to hwhockey.net. That's going to do it for tonight's show. For Jack, I'm Jim. Don't forget to keep it high, keep it wide, and we'll see you next time on HW Hockey.
Bye-bye.